Good morning, guys. I hope everybody is having a wonderful morning. We are going to be, I'm going to be making some Subway sandwiches for dinner today. So we're going to make some sub bread. This is a new recipe. This is the recipe that I am using. It's on Pinterest. I'll leave it linked down below for you guys. But I'm kind of making it a little bit different than the directions say, that I'm using all of the ingredients, but we're just going to do it a little bit different. So in here, I've already got my flour. I've got three and a quarter cups of all-purpose flour and a quarter cup of whole wheat flour. And to that, I'm going to add in some salt. I'm going to do about 1.5 teaspoons. Okay. And we're just going to mix that up. I'll just mix it up with my little measuring spoon here. We have been wanting some Subway sandwiches for a while now, but I can't really eat the bread. It hurts my stomach. So I tried to make them at home. They're just as delicious and they're better in my opinion, but there's nothing wrong with every once in a while going and getting a Subway sandwiches. So I've got that mixed up, and we're going to go ahead and start our yeast. So to this, I'm just going to add in some sugar. Just a little bit, just to get this yeast started. I'm going to add in 1 packet's worth of yeast. That's about 2.25 teaspoon of yeast. All right. So we're just going to mix this up in some warm water until that is nice and dissolved. All right, that should be good. Now I'm going to set this to the side and let this bloom for a while, about 10 minutes. In the meantime, we're going to finish up our bread here. So to this, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of sugar. And we're going to give that a little mix. And then we're just going to let this hang out until our yeast has foamed up and nice and frothy. And then we'll come back and mix everything together and make some sub buns. All right, so my yeast has bloomed. I'm going to go ahead and add all of that right in here, as well as some oil. Now you can do any kind of neutral oil that you want. I'm doing avocado oil. So I'm adding some of that right in there. And we're going to turn this mixer on, and I'm gradually going to add in some more water. It just depends on the weather, how much water you're going to add. You want the dough to be, how do I explain this? You want the dough to be wet but not sticking to your hands or to your fingers. So I'll show you what that looks like when we get it there, but I'm going to go ahead and get this started. All right, you guys, so this dough needed about 7 minutes. I went ahead and got a bowl, greased it with some avocado oil, got my plastic wrap, and now we are ready to make this dough. Now, as you can see, it's a wet dough, but it doesn't stick to my hands. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to when you're working with it. So just keep working with it, and it will stop sticking to your hands. So I'm just going to get all of this out, move the bowl so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to kind of work with this and get it into a ball here. Now, as you can see, it's it's sticking to my hands. That's because I'm not working with it. But like I said, when you start working with it, it will stop sticking to your hands. And I did not add any more flour to this. I just like to watch how much water I put in, because you can easily add a lot more flour than what you want to put into it. All right, that's good. I'm going to shape this into a ball here. Get a little tension on that dough ball. And we're going to put this in the bowl here. Get that top nice and coated in that oil. Flip it over. Make sure it's all coated so it doesn't dry out. Okay, I'm going to give my hands a rinse, and then we'll get this covered with some plastic wrap. And then we're going to put this in a warm place for about an hour to an hour and a half. And then we'll come back, separate this, and get it onto the baking tray. All right, y'all. So my bread dough has doubled in size. I've also got my bread mold here. I use this when I'm making sub rolls or kind of like a French loaf or anything like that. And I've also got a sheet tray here that I'm going to keep this on. So it's kind of flimsy. So I just put it on there to kind of help it not be so flimsy. So I'm just going to set that to the side, and I'm going to turn my dough out onto my board here. And I'm going to shape it into another ball. And then we're going to cut this into 3 pieces. And then we're going to shape those pieces into like little logs. It's the best way to describe it. All right, let's shape this into another little dough ball here. It's nice and soft dough. So I'm just going to cut this into 3 pieces, about as even as I can get it. It doesn't have to be precise, just about. And then I'm just going to flip it over where the top is on the bottom. And then I'm just going to kind of press this out. Take this and just kind of tightly roll this up into like a little log, kind of like you would when you do a cinnamon roll. And I'm going to tuck the ends under and place it on my tray here. All right, you guys, so I've got them shaped into my little loaves here. We are going to go ahead and make the topping, the cheese, kind of cheese sprinkle that you put on the top. It's going to be so good. In here, I've just got some cheddar cheese, and I've got some pepper jack, but you can do mozzarella. And I'm going to add just a little bit of Parmesan, probably about 2 tablespoons. And to this, I'm going to add some garlic powder, some herbs. I'm using Italian seasoning, but you can use whatever kind of herb mix that is your favorite. And I'm just going to mix this together till it's nice and coated. And my oven is preheated to 375 degrees. So that is all nice and mixed. So we're just going to set this to the side. And I'm going to cover this up. And we're going to let this double in size for another 35 to 45 minutes. And then we're going to come back in. You can do an egg wash, or you can spray the top with oil and then just sprinkle over your herb and cheese mixture and then just pop it in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll bring you back when I put the cheese topping on the bread. All right, you guys, so these doubled up in size nicely. I went ahead and sprayed the tops with a little bit of avocado oil. And now I'm just going to sprinkle some of this cheese right on top. And it's going to bake down in that bread and it's going to get delicious. I think the Italian herb bread at Subway is one of my favorites. I haven't had it in a while, so hopefully this is just as delicious. Now, if you have any leftover cheese, you can freeze it. It will freeze really well. And then you can just save it for the next time you make bread or anything like that. All right, I'm going to give my hands a little rinse and we're going to put this in the oven. Y'all, this cheese smells delicious, but we're going to get this in the oven and we're going to bake this for about 20 to 25 minutes or until they are completely cooked through and nice and golden brown.
After the bread cooked about 25 minutes, I just took it out and put it on a wire rack to cool completely. Or you can still like have it a little bit warm and then slice it open. I just let it cool completely because it's easier to cut that way and it won't fall apart. But you can serve this up however you want. The sky's the limit to what toppings you add to this. I had ham, salami, lettuce, tomato, olives, and some of this like Subway sweet onion teriyaki sauce. It's so good. And this sub bun recipe was 10 out of 10. Highly recommend this recipe. I will leave it linked down in the description box below for you guys to check out. And I just served this with some chips on the side. 10 out of 10 dinner. Highly recommend this one. Today I'm going to be making some roast chicken and vegetables. Now this recipe is up on my blog. However, I'm going to be making za'atar chicken today. It's super simple but very delicious. Now I've got a whole chicken here, but you can do any cut of meat that you like. You can do like chicken legs or breast or thighs, whichever you have on hand. This will work just fine. And I've spared you the details, but I've gone ahead and separated the skin and just added some little pats of butter to the chicken in between the skin and the meat. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some za'atar and sprinkle that on the inside and on the outside of the chicken. Now here I'm only doing half the chicken because I'm going to season the other side of the chicken once I get it into the Dutch oven. Now to my Dutch oven, I'm just going to add some oil. Any kind of oil will work just fine. And then I'm going to break up a few onions that I've just got roughly diced and just add those to the bottom of the Dutch oven so that way my roast chicken has something to kind of sit on. Now I'm just going to add the chicken seasoned side down onto that little bed of onions. And then you're just going to add your diced vegetables. I have carrots, potatoes, and onion. And they're in pretty big chunks because anything smaller than like 1.5 inch to 2 inches, they kind of fall apart in the cooking process. So I kind of like to have them in pretty big. They hold their shape when they cook. So you're just going to add all of your vegetables to that, and then you're going to season the top of your chicken with some more za'atar and salt and pepper. Now we're just going to put the lid on this and we're going to put this in a preheated 425-degree oven, and we're going to cook this for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, or until the temperature reaches 160 to 165 degrees. You're going to remove it and let it rest for about 10 minutes. So here's my plate. Now you can serve this however you want. I just served it with the meat and the vegetables, and my daughter wanted some beets to go on the side, so I opened a can of that and fixed that up, and I just served that with the chicken and vegetables. Now you can serve this however you want. If you don't want to do the spices or the vegetables, you can cook it however, but the cook time is still going to be the same. But the directions and everything will be linked down in the description box. All of my recipes will be on my website.
All right, y'all. Today I'm going to be making some school pizzas for dinner. Now, this recipe come from one of my friend's mother. This recipe she gave to me many, many years ago. I think I was like 20 or 21 years old when she gave this to me, but it is really good. Simple ingredients, and it tastes so good. So we are going to make that today. In here, I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now, you can do any kind of mixture of flour that you want. Today, I'm just doing all-purpose. To this, I am going to add 1 cup of powdered milk. You can find this, well, in my store, it's in the baking section, but it might be somewhere different in your store. And this is just going to help the dough be a little bit more sturdy when it's baking up, and it's going to taste like the school lunch pizzas you remember. To this, I'm going to add some sugar, about a tablespoon and a half, going right in there. I'm just going to put the lid on this and put this back over here so it's out of my way. And we're going to add some salt. Now it's 1 teaspoon of fine salt. So I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. So that way it kind of evens out on the flavor. But if you're doing like table salt or a fine grain salt, just do 1 teaspoon. And we're going to add some yeast. 1 packet's worth of yeast, which is about 2.5 teaspoons. And we're just going to mix this well. All right. I'm just going to set this to the side. And now we're going to work on the liquid portion. So in here I've got 3 cups of water, and I'm going to add some flavorless oil. I'm just going to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil. Okay. Now I'm using avocado oil, but any kind of flavorless oil will work just fine. So this is ready to be put together. So I'm just going to add my water and my oil to my flour mixture here. Now make sure your water is warm so that way it activates the yeast. And we're just going to mix this up until it is very well combined. It's going to be a loose batter, but it will come together. All right, so that is pretty good. I am going to just let this sit for about 30 minutes. While this is sitting, I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 475 degrees. I'm going to spray and line a large sheet tray with some flavorless oil and some parchment paper. And I'm going to shred up some mozzarella cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here and we will put all of this together and get it in the oven. All right, y'all, so I've got my cheese grated. I just have it in a bowl here. I'm just going to set this to the side. And I've got my tray sprayed with some oil spray and lined with some parchment paper. And it is time to pour this batter in here. Like I said, it's a wet dough, but it's going to cook up so good. So now I'm just going to kind of even this up a little bit, and I'm going to transfer this to the oven, and I'm going to let this cook for about 10 minutes or so, just until it's cooked through and lightly golden. All right, while the pizza is, or the pizza crust is in the oven baking, I've got some ground beef on the stove cooking up. If you don't want to do ground beef, you can do anything else. You can do sausage, you can do ground pork, whatever you want for your protein, make that. But I'm just doing ground beef today. We're going to start on the sauce while everything else is cooking. So I've got some tomato sauce in here. Now the recipe calls for tomato paste. I do not have tomato paste right now. I need to get some. So I'm substituting for tomato sauce. If you're using the tomato paste, you're going to need 2 cans of tomato paste and some water to thin it out. I'm foregoing that today with tomato sauce. So to the tomato sauce, I'm going to add in some olive oil, just a little bit, probably about 1/4 of a cup. You can add some more if you want. And to that, I'm going to season this up with some salt, some pepper. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder. Now you can season to taste. You can omit any of these if you don't like them. To this, I'm also going to add some oregano and some basil. And we're just going to mix this up and set this to the side until everything else is done. And then I'll bring you back and we'll make a pizza. All right, you guys, the pizza crust is done. I'm going to let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes just for it to cool off a little bit, and then we will top it. I've got everything done and ready to go, so now we're just going to be waiting on the pizza crust. So once this gets cooled down a little bit, we'll get this topped with some delicious toppings. All right, now my pizza has cooled about 10 minutes. It's still warm. We're going to go ahead and add our sauce on here. Now you may not need all of this sauce. Just kind of add a little bit and go from there. I'm going to add just over half of this and kind of spread this out all over the top of this pizza. Because when I was going to school, there was not an inch of pizza that did not have sauce and cheese, and it was so good. That looks like it's going to be enough. So I will freeze the rest of this, and the next time I make pizza, I'll have some sauce. Now to this, I'm going to add my ground beef just all over the top. Like I said, if you don't want to do ground beef, you can do whatever else you want. And whatever you have left over, you can freeze. And the next time you make pizza, you will have some meat to put on your pizza. I've also chopped up some bell pepper. But you can add whatever you want to this and just leave it with meat and cheese, if that's what you like on your pizza. So I'm just going to add a few of these peppers because my favorite pizza is the veggie pizza. My husband and my daughter's favorite pizza is the meat lovers. So we're just going to add a few of these on here. And we all love olives. So I've got a few olives here that I have left over from our subs the other day, and they need to be used up. So I'm just going to add these right here on the top of this pizza. Now comes the cheese. You can add however much cheese you like. I'm going to add quite a bit of cheese. I've got 1 pound of cheese shredded here. I'm not sure I'll use all of it, but I'm going to put a good bit on the top here. All right, that looks good. And I've got plenty of cheese left over, so I'm just going to put this in a bag and stick it in the freezer so I can have it whenever I need it for other dishes. And we're going to put this back in the oven so this cheese can get all melty and delicious. All right, so this is going to go back in the oven for another 8 to 10 minutes, just until all of this cheese is nice and melted, and this smells delicious already. So let's go ahead and get this in the oven. All right, y'all, this pizza is done. It looks good. It smells even better. I'm going to let this sit here and cool down for about 5 to 10 minutes because that cheese is like molten lava. So I at least want it to cool down a little bit. Once this gets cool, I'll show you my plate.
All right, so here's the pizza once it has cooled down just a little bit. You don't want to eat the pizza when it's like right out of the oven because that cheese on there is so hot. So I just let it cool for 10 minutes, and then I cut this pizza in half and then into thirds, so that way you get nice slices like you did in high school when you went to the cafeteria on pizza day. But this was such an easy dinner. It's so good. Now, if you don't want to make the pizza dough that I make in this, you can just use regular pizza dough. It's fine. It will work just fine. But I hope you liked this week's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave me a comment in the comment section down below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, y'all.